to Off Limits. Liberal, irreverent, oh, and really, really gay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Off Limits show. It is... Sorry, the song kept going. It is Wednesday, March 23rd at 11:30 p.m. here in Dallas, Texas. I thank you for joining me. If you're listening live or listening in the archives, thank you for listening, whoever you're listening. I appreciate it. If you want to find out more about me, by the way, you can always go to offlimitshow.com. And you can also listen to the show live there by going to offlimitshow.com // listen-live. And I'm happy to have you listen live if you want to. It's been a while since I've done a show, but I'm doing one tonight because I wanted to say a few things and things I've been thinking about and a few things in the news that have been going on. So thought I would address those things. If you want to call in live during the show, you can call 214-377-0481, or you can call in using Skype by dialing Off Limits Show, and I will be happy to take your call. You can also find out more about me and the show, as I said, offlimitshow.com, but also you can listen to the show by subscribing on iTunes, which it's on Off Limits Show. I think it's on iTunes. I think it's on iTunes. It should be. It used to be. It goes and comes and goes and comes and goes, but because it's hard to explain why it does that. But anyway, it does. But anyway, if you can't find it on there, you can always find me at Spreaker, SPREAKER.com, and search for Off Limits Show there. And you can see all of our shows that we have listed there, not just this one, but many others. And listen to those shows as well. Be sure, of course, to check out gayxyz.com, which is the other show I'm on every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central with Jason and with Christian. So be sure to follow that as well. And what else? Oh, the other thing is you can hear this show live on, hear this show on iHeartRadio as well, which broadcasts all around the world. So feel free to check that out as well. So, I'm calling this show Let's Get Radical. And the reason I'm calling this show Let's Get Radical is because it has been a long time, in my opinion, since I've seen the gays of my youth. And what I mean by that, I grew up, of course, in the 90s, and I've always said the 90s were the 70s 2.0. That's how I've always explained it, because it was essentially the same thing. It was in terms of kind of hedonistic in a way, lots of clubbing and lots of just fun. I don't know how else to explain it. It was just a fun time. Lots of dance music. It was the disco music in the 70s, and then of course it became the house music and dance music in the 90s. So it is very similar in many ways, not just in those ways, but it was similar in that it was, as I said, hedonistic in a lot of ways, and just having fun and kind of a rebellion against the 80s, where everything was sort of buttoned up and conservative because of Reagan and his influence, and Bush, of course, Bush Sr. And then after that, of course, happened, we had Bill Clinton, and that sort of seasoned the, what they call the gay 90s, because of his attitude and the way things were in this country. Of course, the presidents sort of lead the way the country's going to be in terms of its cultural identity. It's done that with every president, actually. So if you look back in the 70s, and the 70s, it was very much the same way before AIDS came about and before it, scapegoated all the gay people into being horrible people because they were spreading this disease. That's what was said about us, of course, in those days. But the reality was, of course, very different. But the thing was, in those days, we had people who actually stood for something. It's not that people don't stand for something now. We have activists now. I consider myself an activist. I'm not out there on the front lines, but I do consider myself that in my own way. But in those days, we actually had people who actually would go out and they would actually fight for gay rights. They would do whatever was ever necessary to get the equality needed in terms of, staying within the lines of the law, of course, but they would do what was necessary to ensure a better future for the other gay people, GLBT community, or whatever. And the only way things really ever changed in society, in my opinion, have been through radical change and through groups, whether they be, religious, or whether they be gay, or whether they be black or white or whatever the group is, and really demanding their civil rights through demonstration, boycotting, whatever methods would necessary to be used. Today, though, unfortunately, people have are so what's the word? Not lackadaisical, but so apathetic about our rights, because they think, okay, well, we have gay marriage now. What else is there? What else do we need? We have gay marriage. We have full equality. Well, of course, we don't have full equality. We do not have full equality by any means. We still can be fired from our positions, our jobs, or whatever. Not that I have that, but people who don't work for themselves, like myself, who work for corporations or anyone, can be fired, especially in the state of Texas and other states like us, without any reason other than the fact they don't like you because they're gay. They can legally say that to your face and fire you for that purpose and that reason. And that is not equality. We still are seen, of course, by a large segment of society as being a threat to the what do they say, the family unit, or whatever they say. So it is certainly, and there's many other things as well that we don't get, and we can't, we don't have the same treatment in. But the thing is that the only way these things change and have ever changed is through radical action, in my opinion. And I think we need to get gays out there marching like they used to march, and demonstrating and actually making a difference that way, because I think it really does make a difference when we're visible. That's the entire reason that we really have gay pride parades and events and things of that nature. It's because I've said this before on my show. It's because it allows us to be visible to it allows us to be visible to the community at large, everyone, the people who would not ever see us or notice us or know or remember that we even exist, the gay people. And so by putting it in their faces and saying, I'm proud to be who and what I am, it's saying, I'm not going away. Here I am. Look at me. This is who I am. If you like me, great. If you don't, fuck off. And that's essentially what it means, because if you allow people to forget that you exist, then it allows them to not treat you any better. If they remember that you exist, you remind them, and you never let them forget, then eventually they have to pay attention to you, and they have to pay attention to your rights, and they have to pay attention. And that's the purpose of parades and things of that nature, and demonstrations. So people sometimes think it's just pointless or whatever, but the truth is it isn't. And I think there's more than one way to fight this battle in this country for gay GLBT rights. And, and the gay men in general have the most rights of the GLBT community, and lesbians as well, I think. And then bis have fewer rights and are seen as somewhat of a mystery to so many people. I don't know why. It's not a hard concept to understand that some people like both sexes. I mean, it's not a difficult concept. But anyway, bi people kind of get the short end of the stick. And then, of course, the people who have the least amount of rights, in my opinion, are, of course, the transgender community, whom we're still hoping, will I think it's their time. I think they're beginning to get their rights and beginning to demand them, and it's just good and be noticed. But it's going to take a very long time. It took, probably, I'd say it takes about 30 years, in my opinion, for a civil rights movement to really reach critical mass, 25, 30 years. And I think that that was the way it was with the civil rights movement in this, the 50s and 60s or whatever, or the 50s, the 60s primarily. And it really wasn't until the 80s that really, honestly, that even women sometimes were seen still as property. And in some states you could even rape them still by their own husband, and it wouldn't be considered rape because they were married. I mean, and so it takes a long time, but it takes the work to do it. And as I was saying, if you don't want to go out and you don't want to protest and you don't want to be marching, along Cedar Springs or or in front of conservative people's houses or whatever it is, or judges or politicians who aren't paying attention to us and our rights in the state or in wherever you live, then there are other ways that you can fight back and other ways that you can actually make a difference. And some of those ways are, of course, writing. Writing is a very powerful medium. Writing is basically a pure voice of a human being. It's taking their voice and saying something about the situation in hand. And that makes a huge difference as well. And I think that if you write, you can use the medium of any kind of art medium. It could be art, it could be fine art, it could be music, it could be video or cinematography. It could be so many things you could do in the arts, especially to be an activist. And then other ways, of course, are to get involved as a politician. And I certainly think it takes someone very very unique to be a good politician, because it is very difficult to make everyone like you. Or not everyone, but the people that you're trying to get to vote for you like you, because everyone has people who don't like them, no matter who you are. And you've got to be pretty charming. You've got to be somewhat good looking, I think, to be really successful. Not always, but generally. And you have to be someone who has somewhat of an ego, enough of an ego for them to think they can make things better when other people can't. Whatever the case may be, politics is another way of making or affecting change. And whatever it is you do on a day-to-day basis, you can use radicalism to make your point about being gay, being okay, and saying, here I am. If you don't like it, fuck you, essentially, is what I say. The definition of radical is relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something. Excuse me. And so that is what we want to do. We want to relate to and affect the fundamental nature of homophobia or of transphobia or whatever, or of misogyny or whatever it is that we're fighting for. And I think it's important to remember, hold on. Sorry, I'm sneezing. Allergy season. Anyway, I think it's important also to remember that, being radical is always kind of seen by people. Oh, he's so radical, or so out there, or so loud, or so annoying, or whatever. Well, good. If someone is those things, and whatever it is that they're standing for, as long as it's a good cause, they should be annoying you because they're getting your attention. They're loud. They're getting your attention. They're radical and they're getting your attention. That's a good thing. And that's how things are changed. So I'm hoping people will begin to think differently, especially the younger generation, the younger gay generation, in their 20s or whatever, or younger, because they, of course, are going to be in the power in the future in 20 plus years or whatever, when my generation, the one after, whatever, get old. So I think it's important for them especially. And I think the millennial generation certainly has a great deal of ambition generally, and a great deal of, self-importance also. But they think they have a certain sense of wrong and right, a good sense of wrong and right. And I think that's important for a generation of people. And because that's the case, they're going to be able to actually make and affect change and want to do that on a daily basis in their lives, however they go about doing so. So it is very important, I think, to remember that people who are going to be, older in the future and in charge, that you guys need to remember you've got to make the changes, and just don't ever get lackadaisical. Don't get lazy about it, and don't ever think, oh, it's done. We're done. It's a done deal. We no longer have to worry about our rights. You have to continually fight oppression, because just like Black people still have to fight oppression today by cops and by society and media and everything else, or women have to fight it as well, and job discrimination and job equality, wage equality, whatever, and other things, and so forth and so on. You continually have to do it, even after you've technically gotten your rights, legally. You still have to maintain the equality through these methods, I think. And so I think it's important for people to get on board with that, and don't forget that being gay is, I think because you're gay, you have a responsibility to the generation that comes after you. I think every generation has made it better for the one that came after it. And, starting all the way back to, of course, I don't know, the 30s and 40s in Berlin or whatever, and then moving on to New York in the 40s and 50s, and then of course the 60s when everything just burst out, into the open for the gay community. I think every generation has made it better for the one before it, and I think it's important that we have reverence for those that are older than us who have done their work, whether they do things like I've done in the past on a broader scale, locally or nationally. Or it's on a major scale, like, international scale, or someone who's famous or whatever the case may be. You have to show reverence for the things that they've done. And I certainly do. There's people who are from the 80s and who survived the AIDS crisis, who are still alive today. Some have HIV, some don't. But they were not only fighting for their lives at that time, they were fighting for their rights at the same time. And so that's a great deal to carry, a burden to carry for a generation of people, gay, straight, or whatever. And so they certainly did do that, in previous generations, and that we certainly have benefited from it. So we've got to thank them. We've got to say thank you for the things that they've done. I think it's important that we do that. Also, I wanted to talk about, there's an article about Steve Grand, and I don't know if you guys even know who Steve Grand is, but he is a gay country and western kind of country singer or whatever. And a few years ago, he came out or whatever, and he had a video. I can't remember. It's about falling in love with a guy or something. And he made the news and all that. And he's a musician anyway. Anyway, during an interview recently, he said that, quote, "People have such incredibly low expectations of me that I just need to show up. For my performances, I need to not be terrible and people will be impressed. I just know people have really, really low expectations of me, and that's what the internet does. I'm such an easy person to target. Young, good-looking, white, gay men. We love to hate those people." So the young, good-looking, white, gay men are the most oppressed in our community. Really? And so a lot of people took offense to that statement and what he was saying, and saying he had basically had such a hard time because he was so good looking, white and gay and young, and everyone had such low expectations of him. Oh, you poor thing, And I'm not saying that I can say what his experience is like, and I'm sure he's in his own perception, he thinks that way and feels that that's the case. But it's only someone who's a young, good looking white gay man, someone like that, or young, good-looking and white especially, who would actually think that they understand what it means to feel oppression, or what it means to somehow feel, truly an outsider. And they don't have a clue, because in this country, unfortunately, in this country, the people who are primarily in charge, or have been for so long, it's changing slowly, but in charge, have been in the world, have been white men. And especially if you're good looking and young, then you even have more opportunities for yourself. That opens the door for you. I'm not saying that always gets them to stay wherever they are, whether it's professionally or in their personal life or whatever. But, they get in the door a lot more often than people who don't meet that criteria. And someone who is those things doesn't have an idea what it means to be a racial minority, or to be handicapped, or to be older, or to be anything but what he is. And I think that someone who has such a myopic view of what it means to be, someone who actually thinks that his experience in life is so difficult, it's just so telling, because it is somewhat of an epidemic, I think, with a lot of gay white men. And I'm sorry, this is not all gay white men, of course not. And I'm half white, but I'm not white 100%. So I couldn't say that I would understand him completely. But I do think that, there are plenty of gay white men who don't feel this way, and plenty of gay white men who do understand and have a broader view and perception of what it means to be a human. But he himself has kind of put himself into a box, and people are not happy at all. I think it's really, 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 really sad that someone like this, who actually has pretty good talent, would use the internet to actually kind of insult everyone else. And I don't know, I'm not saying he necessarily meant it that way, but in his mind, this is how he thinks. And I think it's embarrassing. So anyway, he's gotten a lot of backlash as a result of having said that. And it is true, unless you are someone who is not those things, you don't know what it means to be those things. And just like we don't know what it means if you're not like him, what it means to be white, young, good looking, and gay if you're not those things. But I don't think that we as a community or the nation or the world ever oppress or in some way make it so hard on poor, young, good-looking, white gay men. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. If you think about the gay community as a whole, I mean, who is the community when the gay rights movement began? Primarily, it was because of gay white men, and that's because they were in a position in society to be able to afford to lose their jobs. Some of them, not all of them, but the ones that were in the front of the line, so to speak, were able to afford to do that because those who were minorities at the time or transgender half the time couldn't even get a job. And if they could, there was so much racism or bigotry that they couldn't even risk losing it, even though some did anyway. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, they're the ones that generally began the civil rights movement in the gay community. And, if you look at Beyond Stonewall, or not Beyond Stonewall, or Stonewall the movie or whatever, that's one of the topics that they were discussing that was an issue, is that they were revering the white, young, gay, good-looking gay guy instead of acknowledging really that the true activists and the true radicals and the true stars of that movement's beginning were not really white. They were really the transgendered people and the black people, the Puerto Rican people, Cuban people, Hispanic people in general, whatever. They were black people. They were people of all other ethnicities, because it was from New York, where it was very diverse at the time, which is getting more and wider today as you go. But at the time, it was very diverse, and they represented the community that was there, and they refused to continue to be victims of the police brutality and unfairness and mistreatment by people for nothing but just congregating in one location. So it really was not them. It was them, not the white people, but those people who were the beginning of the movement in America anyway. If you consider Stonewall the beginning of it, the major tipping point, I should say, not the beginning, but the major tipping point. But anyway, they're the ones that have most of the privilege, and that's really the word we're talking about here, is white privilege in America. That's what you have here if you're a white male. If you're gay male, if you're heterosexual male, bi male, whatever, that's what you have. If you're perceived to be white and you're male, then you have multitudes of opportunities that are not afforded to other people simply because of to whom you were born. And that's it. You didn't ask for that. You didn't deserve it. It's not something. It's just something that happened to you by happenstance. You happen to be born to two parents who were Caucasian, or at least look that way, and therefore you do. So there is, I think, some resentment, from both sides. I think there's resentment from white people like him, who think that somehow, he being gay is just so hard because everyone thinks less of him because he is those things and he's white and good looking or whatever. And I think there's resentment from those who do not fit that mold as well, for people like him thinking that somehow they understand what true oppression feels like, because they don't. They never will. But anyway, that's one of the things I want to talk about. Also, there are there's a lot of talk right now. I don't know if you guys those of you who are listening have voted. Or whatever. Hopefully you have, whomever you voted for, at least you voted. Good for you, even if I didn't like who you voted for. But most people who are gay are not voting for Donald Trump or voting for Ted Cruz or any of those people. Most people voting today are voting for a Democrat, like Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And if you want to get radical about things, then in my opinion, the choice would be Bernie Sanders. not Hillary Clinton, because she kind of represents the old guard in a way. Now, I like Hillary Clinton in terms of, she's an okay choice. I would be okay with her if no one better were running. But because Bernie Sanders is running, I always felt he was a better choice, and I felt he was more honest and more direct and truthful. He gets attacked a lot for his ideas and saying somehow that his ideas are unrealistic and that his ideas somehow will never actually work. But the truth is that I think, just because something is difficult, and I've been a victim of this. I consider myself a visionary for sure, and I've always been that way. And I've always had big ideas and big visions of things that I can achieve, whether it's with my nonprofit organization that I run, or if it's with my businesses, or with whatever it might be, just in life in general. I always had big ideas and things I want to achieve. And for me, I feel like if you reach for the stars, maybe you'll get the moon. You know what I mean? So just because you don't always achieve everything you set out to do doesn't mean you won't come close. And that's better than never having tried at all. So people who somehow are against Bernie Sanders and say, oh, his idea is a pipe dream, he can't achieve these things, blah, 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 even though he's put out exact means of achieving these efforts, piss me off. And Hillary Clinton's one of them, because she says that same thing. Of course, she's going against him up on the primaries and stuff. But anyway, so I think just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. And I think Hillary Clinton represents, to me, like I said, the old guard and conservatism. I'm sorry, I can't think today. I think she represents conservatism, and in terms of, within the realm of the Democratic Party. I mean, she is not a conservative, of course, but she is, of the two, conservative, and Bernie Sanders is the progressive thinker. And so I think maybe if the two of them get together and they actually, which I don't know if it's even likely this would ever happen, but if they got on the same ticket, that would be dynamite. That would be amazing. But I don't know if Bernie Sanders would be okay being vice president. Actually, he was asked that by Rachel Maddow, and he said, I don't want to be vice president. I want to be president. So I don't know if he actually would do it anyway. But who knows? He may win that nomination. Stranger things have happened. It's probably unlikely, but you never know. But whoever you vote for, just make sure you remember to vote for someone who has your best interest at heart. And a lot of times people also say, well, you can't just vote about one issue, being gay or gay rights or whatever. And I think you can vote on one issue if that's what's most important to you. I think you have to take what's most important to you in your life, what was going to affect your life in a positive or negative fashion the most, and take that issue and apply it to whichever candidates you're considering. And then determine what they think about that issue, how they're going to act on that issue, and then move forward with your decision based on that. And because you're never going to find one candidate generally that you agree with every single thing they say or think on. I think Bernie Sanders, pretty much I agree with everything he says. I'm trying to remember if there's anything I don't. But generally, you're not going to find someone you agree with everything on. So you just have to kind of find the things that are most important to you and vote that way. Anyway, also, I wanted to let you know that my friend Christian is going to be hosting a RuPaul Drag Race show or showing or viewing at the Brick on Monday at 8, or is it 9 p.m.? I think it's 9 p.m. And so we're going to make a short appearance there. He and my husband and myself, and our friend Jason, who's also on the Gay XYZ show with Christian and myself. So if you want to come out there and support Christian, we'd be happy to have you there and supporting him in his kind of MC role. He loves that show, so we're going to go there to support him. Also, if you are interested in what's happening in sorry, I'm having a little bit of an issue here. What's happening in the area in Dallas, if you're in the Dallas area or whatever, and you want to actually know what's going on, I wanted to tell you what's coming up in terms of events soon. This is Thursday, March 24th, and the next major event that I have is Mr. and Mrs. AWSD, which is the Mr. and Mrs. AIDS Walk South Dallas. They will be crowned at 10 p.m. at the Brick also, which is at 2525 Wycliffe Avenue on March 24th. That's today. So you probably missed that. March 27th, Easter in the Park. Now, this is a tradition in Dallas. It's a gay tradition primarily. But everyone goes there, straight and gay. So if you're interested in doing something for Easter that's a little different, they've been doing this ever since I can remember, since I was in high school. They have Easter in the Park, this will be its 50th anniversary, and they always have a pooch parade. They have all your dogs, and people dress up their dogs in little costumes and stuff, and bonnets or whatever. They play music. It's just kind of a fun thing in Lee Park, and so it's at Lee Park, which is at 3333 Turtle Creek Boulevard, and it's from 1 to 4 p.m. On Sunday. So if you're not doing anything for Easter, you might want to consider doing that as well. Also, on April 2nd, the Gay and Lesbian Fund of Dallas Project Roughway Benefit. It's a gay and lesbian fund for Dallas benefiting the SPCA of Texas. They're going to have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, a DJ spinning the latest music, a silent auction, and a fashion show with models and their dogs wearing the Spring 2016 line. That's from 7 to 10 p.m. at the Jan Reese Jones Animal Care Center in Dallas, which is at 2400 Lone Star Drive. You can call SPCA. You can go to spca.org/GLFD for details on that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the National Black Transmen Conference. It's the 5th annual National Black Trans Advocacy Conference and Awards Gala. The Dallas Addison Marriott Quorum of 14901 Dallas Parkway. That's April 25th to May 1st. So if you're interested in those things, there you go. Maybe you'll find something you want to find out about, and hopefully you'll see one of those things. Also, excuse me, I don't know how many of you watch The Housewives and that sort of thing. Just a reminder, April 11th, The Real Housewives of Dallas is going to premiere. And I don't know if you know, but there's one of the women on there, her name is Leanne Lawkin, and she's from a previous show that was in Dallas called, what was it called? Big Rich Texas or something. And before that, she was on a show called Moms and Daughters of Texas or something stupid like that. Anyway, both the shows were really stupid, but she's going to be on The Real Housewives, which is the, grand dame of all of the reality series for women, of course. And she's a horrible person from what I saw. I mean, she just is weird and shady and fake and everything else. But anyway, there's 4 or 5 women on there, and it should be interesting to see how the Dallasites do it. So check that out as well. So, and I will be back next week, hopefully with another Off Limits show. In the meantime, you can always find me, like I said, at gayxyz.com and go to our show. You can hear our latest episode there under Listen Live. And we'll be back on that show Tuesday, the 29th at 9 p.m. So be sure to tune in to the Gay XYZ show there. It is going to be broadcasting on Spreaker.com as well as on the website. So we hope to see you there. Once again, go to offlimitshow.com to find out more about me, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker.com. I am on all the places. I thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next week. Have a good night.